Hello again, this is Reverend Charles Bay, a servant of the Most High God. I'm explaining creation as God has explained it to me. It was just him and I that went through this for years and years so that I would have some understanding of it. And a lot of it took time for me to get a different mindset than I had. Now we have finished in lessons 1 and 2, Genesis, the first chapter. That first chapter doesn't end till Genesis 2:3. Okay, and then the new one starts at Genesis 4. We're going to explain what God did here that is different than man can understand. Remember this, time does not exist. Time is a situation of things rotating around other things, like the earth rotates around the sun in a 24-hour period on there. That's what produces time. Well, nothing's rotating here. Everything is stationary right now as God designs and puts it together. Okay? Verse 4 of Genesis 2 starts, these are the generations, or when things were generated, okay, of the heavens, notice that's plural now, and of the earth, when they were created. One earth, three heavens. Okay? In the day the Lord made the earth and the heavens, again plural, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth. Do you see that? Before it was in the earth. What did he do? The old adage of what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, what came first, the seed or the plant? Well, the plant came first. God designed this mature plant, this tree or this herb or this whatever it is, flower, he designed. He didn't design the seed, except in it he designed the seed so that it would produce after its kind. It will produce the same species. So it says, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, verse 5, and every herb of the field before it grew. For the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. Nobody was taking care of the ground that we had, the land on there, but he took this tree and then he made it, he designed it, he planted it. He took this flower, he designed it, he planted it, etc. and so on, for all the different species of plants and herbs after their kind. Okay? And it says, but there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. Where did this mist come from? Well, we call it dew. Okay? And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and he became a living soul. We get all three parts of man here in this verse 7. It says that he formed the man of the dust of the ground. He made him a physical body, one that lives in this 3 dimensions and will always live in this 3 dimensions. Okay? He made the physical body, then he breathed into it the breath of life. That's the spirit of man. That without the spirit you don't have life. Life is in the spirit. We sometimes try to call that the subconscious, but the spirit controls this subconscious on it. And then it says he became a living soul. What is a soul? A soul is who you are, your personality, your quirks, everything that about you that makes you the way you are and different from others is the soul of man. It's the soul of man that he came to seek and to save, that which was lost. It's the soul of man that's lost. The spirit of man came directly from God, was breathed out of his mouth into him on there. And so he is body, soul, and spirit, or if you want to look at it the other way, spirit, soul, and body. Okay? And the spirit and the soul are united, intertwined with each other. But that spirit is from God, the soul is who you are, and the body is the physical part of you. Okay? It says, and the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden. Let me turn this down a little bit so you can see this a little better. Come on, focus. This is land, this is the earth, this is land, this is Eden. Okay? He made this garden and he took and he planted in that garden all the trees and all the things that are good to eat and whatever for man, the beauty for man, all of this stuff, so that it'd be a perfect environment for mankind, Adam. Okay? It says eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, that is good for food. The tree of life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay, we have two trees here that God made specifically to do a purpose. One of them was the tree of life. If you eat the fruit of this tree, your body is renewed totally over and over so that you could literally live forever. Again, Adam is being made an eternal being. He is to live forever in this perfect environment called Eden. All right? And then it says they also had the garden of good, the tree of good and evil. This fruit, whatever it does, affects the brain to where you can know what is good and what is bad. Evil is bad, everything else is good. All Adam knew without eating of this tree is good. Everything was perfect, everything was good that God produced for him. God made a perfect environment for him to live in. Okay? Verse 10, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads. The name of the first is Pison, that it is it which is compassed the whole land of Halava, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good, and there is bdellium and onyx stone. Where do we find all those today? Gee, I think it's South Africa. So maybe this river went down, Pison went down towards the south. They've even had pictures taken of the earth from satellites that we've sent out, and they could see like 3 or 4 foot deep in the African desert. They could see where a river bed was, where there used to be a river. Okay? And the name of the second river is Gihon, and the same is it that compassed the whole land of Ethiopia. Well, we know Ethiopia is in Africa, so it goes through Africa too. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel, which that is it which goes towards the east of Assyria. Assyria, again, is north of where Israel is today. It was a little bit north and a little bit east of there. Okay, and then the fourth river is Euphrates. Well, Euphrates river we know today goes down through China and Tibet and that area on it. So here the four rivers are that we can generally locate. Not the same as what he originally designed it, because there's a catastrophe coming. Okay, but we're not dealing with that yet. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it. For in the day that you eat thereof you shall surely die. Now that day is going to be very, very important. Let's bring this back up to where you can see me. There I am. Okay, this day is going to be very important, and I'm going to prove it to you in a couple of minutes here. So hold on to that thought with that day, okay? Okay, verse 18. And the Lord God said, beginning of a paragraph, and the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him. Understand what we're doing in these next two chapters is we are expanding what took place on day 6 and day 7. We're expanding those. These are not new days. These are not after these days, but these are expanding on what God did while he was producing what he was producing on day 6 and on day 7. Not a 24-hour day, but a start and a finish time of, could be eons, could be 1,000 years, could be just time, okay? But time doesn't exist because they're eternal beings. God's eternal, man's eternal. Nothing's moving in the solar system. Okay? It says, and out of, let's go back to 18. And the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a help meet for him. Somebody to help him. And out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air. And what are we talking about? Domesticated animals, domesticated birds. Okay? and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. Okay, now Adam is taking the time to get to know each one of these animals. God brings him a dog. He gets to know that dog, plays with that dog, learns that dog, and then decides to call him. Says he's got the nature of God, so he just puts God backwards, dog. Okay? Same with cow. He gets to know that cow. He sees what that cow can produce. He sees what that cow wants to do. Same for a bird, a parrot, a myna, whatever. He's taking the time necessary to learn what they are and then naming them what they are. The same thing is what God would do if God did it. Except this is going to be man's dominion, not specifically God's dominion. Adam's going to worship God, but these things will worship Adam. Okay? And verse 20, and Adam gave names to all the cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field, but for Adam there was not found a helpmate for him. God's taken all this time. He's designed all these animals that can be domesticated, cats, dogs, you name it, on there. Parrots, as I said, birds, all these, trying to find something that would comfort Adam, that would make Adam feel like he belonged there, to make him happy. All right? But he didn't find any. So what's he do? Verse 21, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman and brought her unto man. What did he do? He took the DNA of man, but he took part of man and separated or divided man. Okay, remember we talked about divide again being half. He kind of took half of Adam, what Adam was, and separated, made it male and female, and produced this woman from the man. Okay, and Adam said, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, and the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. They didn't know they were naked. To be downright honest with you, they had the Shekinah glory on them. They were in the image of God, but they had this cloud of glory on them. And they walked around, and they didn't know that what naked was. That would be evil to have lust, and they didn't know evil. Okay, so God made Adam. Then he made all these other animals, designed them, and gave them to Adam, but nothing satisfied the longing in Adam for physical touch, the physical love that we know for our wives and that. So when he made woman out of man, he took the woman, brought her to, he called her woman because she came out of man, and because the two of them come back together in a sexual relationship, they would become one. That's how they become one. Okay? Going on, chapter 3. It says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. God made the serpent, but the serpent was slyer, sneakier if you want, on there. And he said unto the woman, yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? He's tempting her. She's standing there. Adam is standing there. Okay, we'll prove that in a second. And the woman said unto the serpent, you may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Notice she added something to it. God never said she couldn't touch it. He only told her that she couldn't eat it, this tree of good and evil. And the serpent said unto the woman, you shall not surely die, For God doth know that in the day you eat thereof, notice he's using that word day, your eyes shall be open, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. What did God know that man did not know? Evil. And here he's saying, if you eat of that, you're going to know about evil, and then that evil is going to dominate you, and you're going to die. You're going to die both spiritually and physically if you eat of that. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, lust of the eyes, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, wisdom, want to be smart, okay? She took the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her. See there? Her husband, Adam, was right with her. Well, then why didn't Adam stop her? Shame on him. All he had to do was say, Eve, we were told not to do that. Why didn't he? 1, he didn't have authority over her. 2, it wasn't his place to try to correct her. Every person has to make their own decision whether they want to be saved or not. Every person has to make their decision whether they want to fellowship with God or not. It is an individual thing that we do. Okay? She ate of it. She gave to her husband with her, and he did eat. He knew it was wrong. He chose to be with his wife over just being with God. He made a decision, a choice to sin. Okay? And the eyes of them were both opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Their eyes were opened. Also the Shekinah glory was gone. Holiness cannot stay around where evil is. So they couldn't have the Shekinah glory on them anymore. They could now see each other and realize that they were naked, and they knew that they should be covered. So they made of themselves aprons out of fig leaves. Okay? Verse 8. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. When God came down to walk with them every day, now we can get into whether that's a theophany, that it was actually Jesus that was walking with them before he was created in a human form. We could say that it was just a spirit, and they were so in tune with him that the spirit did. It doesn't matter. They used to their thing that made their day was that they could go and run and fellowship with God. They could fellowship with the Creator. They wanted to be with him more than anything in the world up to this point. It was the highlight of their day, my sister said. Okay? My sister Mary is an evangelist, by the way. It was the highlight of the day. And the Lord God called unto Adam and said unto him, Where are you? It's not that God didn't know where they were. It's that he was used to them running into his arms, running to him, be embraced by him, running to fellowship with him on there, and all of a sudden they weren't running there. They didn't come directly to him. They were hiding from him. And this hurt God very bad. Verse 10. And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid. Notice that voice is word, actually. Okay, I heard thy word in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. And God said, And who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree whereof I have commanded you that you should not eat? And the man said, What's the first thing we do? Blame others. Of course. The woman whom thou gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. And the Lord God said unto the woman, What is this that you have done? And the woman said, The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. Blame the serpent. Okay? And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because you have done this, you are now cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly thou shalt go. So apparently the snake originally did not crawl on his belly. Probably had legs, maybe looked more like a salamander, who knows, on there. But now he has to go on his belly. And dust shall you eat all the days of your life. And I will put enmity or hatred or fear even, between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. Her seed shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Okay? I'm not going to try to explain that to you. That's not the important part. The important part is, unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow you shall bring forth children, and the desire shall be to your husband, and he shall rule over you. He's now giving rulership of the man over the woman. Why? Because she made a foolish choice and was the first to make that choice, and then had him do the same thing. Okay? And he said unto Adam, because you have hearkened unto the voice of the woman, and have eaten of the tree of that which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for your sake. In other words, it's not going to be the fruitful thing. They could plant a seed now and it grow up in days on it. Not going to be like that. It's going to be, cursed is the ground. In sorrow you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns also and thistles shall bring forth, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. Now, I want you to understand something. He says, in sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Now, time is starting. God is starting to rotate everything around everything, and there's time. Why? Because God knows that in the fallen state, he would live forever in that state and never get reprieve from the evil that he's doing. So rather than have man live forever, he starts time. Time was to be a benefit for us who are sinners, who have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Romans 6:23. Okay? Going on, I want to back up here a second now. Before he said, the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. Remember, two definitions for day. A 24-hour solar day and a time period. Okay, or a starting and beginning end. And we now look at this and it says, okay, if he starts time at this point of sin, then there will be a 24-hour solar day. Did he die immediately in that 24-hour solar day? The answer is yes, but not physically, not his soul, but his spirit. Now let's get this straight. Spiritual death is not quit existing like we think of death. Spiritual death is no longer in fellowship with the one that made it, God the Father, Creator God. No longer can man on a spiritual level, as a sinner, fellowship and have fellowship with the Creator God. His spirit is dead to God. The only way God can communicate with him now is with his soul, with his mind, his will, his emotions, his five senses. Taste and hearing and seeing and smelling and, feeling. All those senses. That's the only way God will be able to communicate with him, because the day that he ate of it, his spirit died. Doesn't mean it quit existing. He still was breathing, but he no longer was in relationship with God. He's dead to God spiritually, and shall exist that way till something changes it that God designs. Okay? We'll get into that down the road, of course. Also, let's cover something else. I'm going to skip slightly ahead here so that you know where it stands. Verse 5, I believe, chapter 5, I believe, it says, this is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam, in the day when they were created. And Adam lived 130 years, that's from sin, 130 years, and begot a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. They're not talking about about Cain or Abel at all here. They go directly to Seth. And the days of Adam after he begot Seth were 800 years, and he begot sons and daughters. In all, the days of Adam lived were 930 years. When you go through this whole chapter, and we will cover some of it on there, when you do that, you find that man never lived 1,000 years. There's no man ever lived 1,000 years from the time started in our natural universe when sin happened. From that point on, no man lived 1,000 years. Methuselah was the oldest living man recorded, and he was 960 something years. Okay, we'll get exactly into that when we get into there. But no man lived to be more than a day, being 1,000 years. So both definitions of day are in. He died spiritually, the 24-hour solar day that it happened. He died physically 930 years later, never making 1,000 years. You see how it fits? It comes together. That's how it was. All of this before this disaster we're going to talk about. All right. It says here, where am I at? Verse, okay, we'd already sinned, and he's talking about, okay, we were down to verse 19. In the sweat of thy face shall thou eat bread till thou returns unto the ground. What's he doing? He's cursing the body, saying it's going to go back to being dust when you're no longer using it. For out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. And Adam called his wife's name Eve, this is the start of a new paragraph, Eve, because she was the mother of all living things, all living beings. Okay? Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skin and clothe them. He clothed them. He gave them clothes. He showed them how to make clothes rather than out of fig leaves, but out of animals. Now all of a sudden there's a blood sacrifice that's going to be involved in this thing. And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is come as one of us to know good and evil. Now, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life. Remember, that's the one that has the fruit that causes you to live forever physically. And eat and live forever. Therefore, Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve kicked out of the garden, the perfect environment, to till the ground from whence he was taken. So he drove out man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. In other words, they were kicked out of the garden, just like Satan gets kicked out of heaven, can no longer return there. Blocked. All right, we've gone just about our 30 minutes here. I hope you understand what God did and the day and how time is affected here because of sin. We'll pick up chapter 4 next time and cover 4 and 5 and maybe 6. Depends on how far we get. But for today, that's as far as I'm going to go. God bless you. Please pay attention. If you have any questions, I'm going to be at the end of Genesis giving you my email address, and you can write it down and email me with questions. God bless you. Goodbye.